video is a bit of fun because I'm in the mood for a book tag, and what's the best kind of book tag to do but a New Year's book tag? Now, I saw this over on Misty's Books Face blog, and we've been following each other for a while. I really enjoyed reading her answers, and I figured I'd take part in this tag for myself. So let's get into it. The first question of this tag asks how many books I'm planning to read in 2026. Now, if you haven't watched my resolutions post for 2026 yet, you may not know that I'm planning on pushing myself a little to read 60 books this year. Last year, I set myself a target of 45, but I managed to read 48. However, I did that and achieved my reading goal by the beginning of December. So my reading kind of progress stopped. I kind of got halfway through December and I wasn't reading very much. I was obviously kind of taken up with Christmas plans, but I think I could have pushed myself harder. So that's why this year's reading goal kind of is a bit of a push. It means I'm going to have to be a little bit more intentional about reading a bit more regularly. And I have a lot of books I want to get to, so hopefully having a slightly loftier goal will help me achieve that. The next question of the New Year's book tag asks to name 5 books that I didn't get to last year that I plan to in 2026. And there are a lot of books that I could have featured in this section, but in particular I chose to pick on a summer reading challenge where I didn't necessarily get to all the books. The first book is a book called Eve by Kat Bohannon, and that is a non-fiction that looks at kind of the evolution of humans over time and what kind of pivotal role women and their biology have played in terms of shaping kind of humanity as we know today. It's a little bit feminist, it's a bit non-fiction, quite different from a lot of the fantasy and sci-fi I read on my kind of TBR. But it's a book that interests me and I'm looking forward to giving it a go. The next book is one that's going to feature in a later question, and I'll give you the context in that question, and that is The Bone Collector by Jeffrey Deaver. Book 3 in this section is a book I originally set on my 20 Books of Summer challenge, and then again tried to make myself read the book in my December TBR, but I didn't get to it again. And that is The Burning Girls by C.J. Tudor. Now, I've read a few books by C.J. Tudor so far, and I really like her writing style. I think it's funny. She's got a bit of a bugbear against the clergy, or at least she comes across that way in the way she writes her books. So they're a little bit fun. They're obviously a little bit different in that it's a kind of darker, kind of mystery thriller genre. So looking forward to that one. Flitting to historical fiction, and I want to pick up a book by Heather Morris called Sisters Under the Rising Sun. Now, I really enjoyed Heather Morris's The Tattooist of Auschwitz series, so picking up Sisters Under the Rising Sun was pretty much an auto buy for me at that point. I love her writing style. I love how she goes to the effort to really understand and highlight the experiences of people who've survived the likes of the concentration camps, and really her priority is getting that perspective through. So a lot of her stories are based on actual real life stories, and it's a nice way to, it obviously features a very unpleasant part of history, but it really focuses kind of on the human side and obviously educating to make people aware of what happens. And I'm a firm believer that we should read these things to make sure they don't happen again. So looking forward to Sisters Under the Rising Sun. Finally, a contemporary book on this section of the list is A Man Called Ove by Friedrich Bachmann. Now, I've tried to get this book on my reading list a few times. I've also tried incorporating it into a suggestion for book club, but we've not quite got there yet. So it's quite a short book, so there's no reason why I can't fit this in myself. And it'll also be another big win because it's a physical TBR book, which is a reading goal of mine for this year. I own it upstairs. It'll be nice to read it and then make a decision. Do I keep it if I want to reread it, or can I unhaul and rehome it at a later date? The next question asks which genre I read the most of. Now, if you're familiar with my content, it probably isn't a difficult question to answer. Fantasy, fantasy, bit more fantasy. Now, don't get me wrong, I do read other things, but fantasy is definitely my most read genre and has been pretty much since the inception of my blog. So, as much as I do love it, and I will be setting out to continue with fantasy series amongst others, like I want to make a bit more of an intention to try and read more varied and make it a little bit less genre biased going forward. I do enjoy multiple genres, and I historically as a teenager I was only reading fantasy and then getting bored because I was basically reading the same tropes over and over again. So variety is definitely kind of what I'm going for. So hopefully I can bring a little bit more of an even spread in 2026. The next question for this tag post asks for 3 non-book related goals for 2026. Now, I confess I'm not a big New Year's resolutions kind of setter. Outside of doing my blogging and my reading goals and stuff like that, I don't really do that for myself. It doesn't have to happen in January. I've started making life changes at random points of the year. You don't have to wait for a fresh start to do it. But even still, there are some longer kind of targets that I want to meet that aren't necessarily New Year bound. The first of those is to start saving to get married. So my partner and I got engaged last year, and obviously weddings are expensive. So yes, they don't have to be. Ours probably won't be mega expensive. But honestly, we both need to start thinking about saving for that. So that's kind of one of the things we're working towards. A slightly shorter term goal, I suppose, is to finish renovating my kitchen. So I started like updating all the cupboard fronts and stuff like that in my kitchen at the back end of last year, kind of to refresh it, keep it going a little bit longer, because there's nothing wrong with kind of the cabinets itself, but the fronts were just showing their age. They were looking a bit tired. But me being me, like I could have stuck with the same colour, but no. I just decided to change it, so it's involved a little bit more, I've taken on a bit more of a project to kind of get it in a way that everything's updated. So I still have some trims, the plinths I need to trim down. I'm kind of onto the last bits, but it's all not straightforward bits to swap and change over. So hopefully I can get that sorted out in the next few weekends. So I have a kitchen in one colour. That would be nice, right? My final kind of non-bookish intention for 2026 is to make more effort to try some new recipes and cook from scratch. Now, don't get me wrong, I do a reasonable amount of cooking from scratch anyway. That's kind of something I started last year with making more of an effort on. So this isn't really a new goal, but rather it's more about continuing with that intention so I don't get bored. Because when you start getting like that, you get into bad habits, and I've been there, I've done that. That's what I'm trying to undo. But I've been really enjoying trying some different things. I had butternut squash soup for lunch today, and up until yesterday I had never prepped a butternut squash in my life. Things like that. So it's all about being more intentional about the food I'm eating. It's how fresh it is, but also just like enjoying cooking rather than just considering it a burden. Now, this next question is where we are going to get more into The Bone Collector by Jeffrey Deaver. And the question is, what is a book I have had forever, but I'm determined to read? And this is the book. And the reason why is because it's been in my family for a long time. Now, my sister picked up a copy of this book when she was at university for me. I think it was on some kind of like O2 offer at Waterstones or something. Very specific thing to remember, but hey ho. But yeah, she picked up a copy of this book. She was probably in her first or second year of university. She hasn't been at university for a long time. So it's probably been realistically about 7 to 8 years since I think she picked up this book. So I have owned it a long time and I have still not read it. So yeah, I definitely need to get to this one. So again, physical TBR, it's all good stuff. Definitely one I need to get to in 2026. Finally, we have the question asking for one word for our hopes for 2026. And the word I have chosen is auspicious. Now, that obviously means very different things in different contexts. It's hoping or being conducive for success, and obviously that's going to mean very different things in terms of my blogging, kind of content creation, going back to kind of the health habits thing with cooking from scratch. But it's all just hopeful for success. Obviously, we all want the best for ourselves and be hopefully very able to say that we've had a successful year in 2026. So that is today's New Year book tag. I hope you've enjoyed today's post and maybe been inspired to pick up some of the books I featured on today's list. If so, let me know in the comments, or alternatively, what books did you not get to in 2025 that you hope to in 2026? Until then, see you next time.